I have PenFed, that's a fact.
I have PenFed, that's a fact.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
My credit card purchases get me cash back.
No one else gets these rewards.
Sergeant, that is just plain untrue.
What in tarnation?
Sir, PenFed's Paracash Rewards card isn't just for military members. Anyone can get cash back on all purchases.
Ah, Figgins! You've ruined my favorite song.
PenFed Credit Union. Visit PenFed.org/PowerCash. To receive any advertised product, you must become a member of PenFed, insured by NCUA.
This is CBS Eye on the World with John Batchelor. Here's John Batchelor.
This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor, welcoming Simon Constable in Edinburgh, Scotland, writing for Barron's and Forbes and other distinguished publications about the markets, especially about the commodity markets, paying a deal of attention to the climate story, which is now dominating the planet. The planet gets very small when you can connect the drought in Eurasia, the drought in North America, the drought in South America, the drought in Cuba, with the wildfires of Siberia, especially the Yakutsk region, the coldest area on Earth. Now the fire's out of control. They don't even bother measuring acreage in Siberia. The air is so heavy with ash and smoke that the children are kept indoors, and the complaints are directed at the Kremlin. The connection is made in Russia with climate. The fires of Northwest United States, those fires are spreading smoke all across the northern band of the 48 states to cover the sky of New York City, so that within these last hours you were not able to discern detail. It was a smog over the city and other cities to the east of New York and to the west of Oregon. I connect all those events to Simon's reporting on commodities, but first I check in with Simon about Freedom Day in the United Kingdom. That was some days past, Monday the 19th. However, there were so many caveats on Freedom Day, including could you travel to France and come back without quarantine? Could you do this? Are schools to stay open because we're having all these sick days? So I go to Scotland because uniformly, since the beginning of the virus, Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister in Scotland, has been exceedingly cautious and not kept up with gotten ahead of the mandates out of London. So, Simon, a very good day to you in Edinburgh. I know it is summertime. These are the lovely months for living in the northern part of the United Kingdom. However, the Freedom Day on Monday, have you noticed changes in the way people are conducting themselves in the restaurants, in the travel in Scotland? Good day to you, Simon.
Good day to you, John. It is very interesting. It is the summer here, which means I don't have to wear a really thick woolen sweater to keep warm. And so that's great. I could go out without that and enjoy eating outside. This morning, and this is an important part of the lockdown, I went out and had a cappuccino and a bacon roll for breakfast. I had to go inside wearing a mask to make the order, and then I sat outside, because I chose to receive the food and the coffee. That has been in place for quite a while now. That isn't a big change. What we're seeing is it's been uplifted in England, but I'm in Scotland, and it's really indiscernible. What I understand about England is that, yes, there are lots of uplifts, but lots of caveats, as you mentioned. So if you want to go to France, which is amber rated by the very confusing color-coded system, it's amber rated, which means it's fairly dangerous. If you come back, you'll have to self-isolate in your home or wherever you're staying for 10 days. If we hadn't uplifted this, then you probably would have had to have spent the time in a hotel at the government's expense. You pay the government, and then after your 10 days, then you can get out and go home. So it's really not as obvious as all that what's going on. I think in London, people are less obedient than in other places. Certainly, they're less passive, and so I think there may be a lot more freedom actually just being taken by people. But that seems to really sum it up. It's not obvious to the untrained eye what's going on.
We look at Scotland's emergency room. This is a BBC report within these last hours. Public Health Scotland publishes monthly figures, and what those show is that there's a sharp increase in demand of emergency rooms. The explanation is various, but certainly you can see it on the chart. One explanation that I was attracted to, Simon, by an emergency room physician was that people delayed visiting the hospital for a year and a half because of COVID-19. Because of the presumption that the vaccine is here, there's less fear about going to the emergency room. And the NHS system, the Royal College of Emergency Medicine system, is overwhelmed with visits to the emergency room. Scotland watches this very carefully because you're also in the target zone of the Delta variant. You have had experiences with the NHS. I just briefly touched upon it when I was at school in Edinburgh. How is it regarded in Scotland? As a place to go to or a place to avoid?
In general, I would say the NHS, which I did work for a very, very long time ago, and it was a very brief period as a messenger, it's regarded very highly. However, when last year came, the last thing anyone with a brain wanted to do was to be in a hospital, because if you went in without COVID, you might come out with it. And it was almost like you felt you were going to get infected with something you didn't have if you went to hospital. So a lot of people like me were avoiding going anywhere near a doctor or nurse or anything like that. So what instead a lot of people were trying to do was to have phone appointments. And for some things that just clearly doesn't work. Other people said, well, okay, I'm just not going to deal with a doctor now because I can't go and see them and the phone just really won't work. And therefore I'll just limp along, metaphorically, with whatever ailment I might have. And I think that's what a lot of people have done. And now it appears that we're getting near the end of it, or that's what we're being told. We're getting near the end of the pandemic. People are saying, okay, well, I still can't see a doctor in person unless it's something very traumatic, but I can go to the emergency room. Just like if you don't have insurance in the US, you can go to the emergency room and get treated immediately rather than having to deal with all the insurance issues. So I think that's what's happening, and they're saying that the emergency room has a great brand name. And so they're having people going there for things that they wouldn't normally have gone to the emergency room. Like the only times I've ever been in an emergency room have been when I have had something critical, like I've been in a vehicle crash or something like that. Other people might be going for other reasons now just because they can get in, and that is basically filling up the hospitals in ways that they had never expected. So it's sort of overloaded.
I'm looking at a chart of COVID-19 in Scotland. There is clearly a spike. This is Delta. We can see it. It's not close to what we saw in January of 21. That was not Delta. This is the Delta spike that we see in London, that we see in Moscow, we see in Vilnius, we see all the capitals I've called, Simon. We see it now. Is there alarm about this in Edinburgh? Is there news from the First Minister or the administration there? Scotland is a government within a government, and First Minister has a great deal of authority in Scotland. So is there a special attention? Is there talk about limited lockdowns or closing schools or businesses, Simon?
I have not heard any news about shutting businesses down or closing schools or anything like that. And I think even if there was, I think most people would ignore it because Nicola Sturgeon, the First Minister of Scotland, has been, and you mentioned this, she's been extremely cautious. I mean, extremely cautious to the extent of really not doing anything unless it's proved okay to do by England, and that's Boris Johnson. So I've heard nothing. I mean, absolutely. And yes, we're seeing this spike up. I think there may be a situation where people are inured to scary stories from the government. And you're right. Yes, there is a spike in cases, but if people won't listen, it won't do any good.
Simon Constable is in Edinburgh, Scotland, and having covered the health story as best we can, we're going to turn to climate and the wildfires and the drought, because the big question hanging over all Western businesses is this inflation real? Is it temporary? I can't answer that question. No one can. In the fullness of time, we'll have the answer, but we can pay attention to the prices we're paying at the supermarket and attendant costs for business-to-business transfer. This is CBS Eye on the World. I'm John Batchelor.
Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock. Streaming only on Peacock.
John Wayne Gacy killed 32.
Straight from the killer's mouth.
They want you to believe that I alone committed these murders.
The new gripping 6-part documentary series, John Wayne Gacy, Devil in Disguise. All episodes streaming now, only on Peacock.